My name is Christian Carrion. I am the news editor at buzzerblog.com. I am a game show historian, and I've been a contestant on 6 game shows since the day I turned 18.
And Christian Carrion!
Let's get this going! First game goes to Christian.
Now it's Christian's turn to face the beast.
You have $15,000, Christian.
Now, in partnership with the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong National Museum of Play, I'm talking to former contestants from all walks of life across the history of game shows to learn their stories.
There was a cue card, someone holding cue cards on stage, and I remember them pull up the first card, and
I had rice-a-roni coming out of my ears. They were delivering.
I didn't know that it was like a thing for me. I didn't realize I had the bug
way they look at you as you tell them, yeah, I was on 4 game shows. They're like, no way.
The era of daytime TV game shows was a wonderful time because there were games for everybody.
Anita Gillette said, Jack and Jill's water. And I said, things in a pail, things in a bucket.
And watching it and being part of it. And that was fascinating to me. And it turned out to be a way into the business, unbeknownst to me.
It just takes over your body and it makes you do things that you don't normally think you would do.
Watching the producers try to evolve something that's going to grab the audience and make them say, no, don't
and you just hope your brain and your mouth and your body are sort of communicating with each other.
During that 5-second span of time where she knows she's not on camera, she just stares you down. I was looking at her and smiling just because I like her.
So they offered me $1,000, and $1,000 is a lot of money, but when do you ever get a chance to take the box on Let's Make a Deal?
And then one person would be like, how did you not get that answer? And that sticks with
Game shows are like an art form of their own. They really don't get the recognition.
It's not always smarter. It's just that they ask the questions that I happen to know the answer to, or I'm a little faster, and that's all.
Maybe after my time has come and gone in 50, 75 years, someone will hear this recording interview and say, seems like an interesting time, these game shows. I should go look them up.
People ride bikes. People go bowling. I do game shows.
I wanted to feel that rush of everybody applauding.
As much joy as I might have brought you through the TV, believe me, the joy was all mine.
Tell us about yourself. Conversations with game show contestants. New episodes weekly on all major streaming services, on Buzzerblog, and at museumofplay.org. Come join the fun.
Welcome to the Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wowing the world over the platform they deserve. I am your host, Nathan Ragland, and for today's episode, I think it's time for us to get a little mythical, especially with not just the tales our artist tells, but the way he is able to tell it. Today's guest is Abraham Matias, a puppet artist and illustrator with a stunning style with his paper-cut puppets, making magnificent mythical worlds possible. This was a conversation I had been pining to have for a while, seeing Abraham's unique style, and the fact that this is also the first time we have featured a puppeteer or a puppet artist on the podcast, which is an incredible feat on its own. The conversation that we would have was leaps and bounds more incredible and insightful than I could even imagine, and I already knew it was going to be an incredible one based on the visuals alone that he presented. Make sure you support Abraham with all the links down in the description below. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. Leave 5 stars wherever you can. I see that stuff. I absolutely love it, and I love you guys. Thank you. If you want to go a little bit further with that support, maybe you should consider contributing to the podcast Patreon at patreon.com/PMAP. For as little as $1 a month for being a part of the Avid Art Enthusiasts, you can get episodes one day early, discounts at the merch shop, bonus episodes when they drop, and so much more. Or you could be like the wonderful Wile E. Coyote or Jacob Ragland and be content connoisseurs. Whatever your price point, whatever you're able to afford, any little bit certainly does help. It helps us grow, helps us get more opportunities to get out there and get our name out there, help with funding like thumbnails and future merch designs. And if you want to be a part of that contribution today and really help the podcast grow, I would greatly appreciate you going to patreon.com/PMAP to join for as little as $1 a month. I must reemphasize, $1 a month. And hey, look, if you can't do that and all you're just doing is looking for a cool place where you can talk about incredible artists and be a part of a growing community that is truly loving art, maybe you should consider joining our Discord server, the Artist Sanctuary. The group we've been developing and culminating there has been absolutely wonderful. Seeing the art they've been able to post, whether it's completed masterpiece or just little doodles, it's so much fun to see what people are able to post in there. And we think that you would be a wonderful addition to that group today. But now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast. I think you would actually be the first, like, quote-unquote puppeteer, or at least puppet artist, to be on this podcast. So that's a good little monumental step in the right direction. So there you go.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
It's you go ahead.
It's I guess a little hard defining what I do, like puppeteer and puppets, all of that, because it's like puppets. It's such like a vast variety of what puppetry can do, right? You have, I guess the most popular one is kind of like the Muppets and that kind of stuff. When I say puppets, I think people usually go to that.
Because that's the most like prominent, most well known, like you said.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I've only started in puppetry for about since the pandemic, actually, during lockdown.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so it's been fairly recent, I guess. And yeah, I mean, I myself, even every day, I still discover how deep the whole puppetry community really is. And it's very fascinating. Just like it's very inspiring to see how much there is still so much to learn, to discover, to meet all these new artists and old artists, and the legacy and the history of puppetry.
I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, thinking as far back as probably the beginning of just entertainment as a whole, like just thinking about some of the first puppets or whatnot that were probably used or whatnot, seeing kind of what that inspired, what that's kind of moved along or whatnot, and what people have been used with the medium to kind of express themselves more than anything else. Like, I can see why it's kind of hard to define what exactly a puppeteer or a puppet artist is.
Yeah. Actually, on the trip that I took, I had a chance to go to Greece.
Okay.
And at the archaeology museum, the anthropology museum in Greece, I found that they had ancient puppets made of stone with strings. Some of them were still holding. So we're talking about it goes like ancient civilizations. They were using puppetry as like a medium of just entertainment, and that's fascinating.
That is fascinating. Like, whenever I said the beginning of entertainment, I didn't realize I was talking about ancient entertainment as well. Goodness. That is outstanding to even think about. Goodness. And now here
I knew that they had... Yeah, I knew that the Greeks, of course, with the theater and myths and all of that, of course, they had that legacy, but I had no idea about the puppets. When I found them, I'm like, no way, are these actual ancient puppets? I'm like, all right.
That is awesome. I need to see them now. I gotta do a Google search after we get done with this interview. All right, Abraham, before I really get going, I want to ask the icebreaker question of the podcast, if I may. Let's say you get to go to a desert island on your own accord. It is just you, alone with your thoughts. You get to kick back, relax, breathe. Get to truly enjoy yourself for a little bit. With accommodations, obviously. You're not stranded on this island. You just get a chance to relax.
Okay, good.
To help with whatever vibe you want to try to go with on this island, you could bring one piece of media or one piece of art with you to help with whatever headspace you want on this island. If given this opportunity, what would that one piece be?
All right. Oh, man. I guess... Jeez, I think... And I'm just talking right now because it's my current obsession. Probably will change in a month. But I think right now I'm pretty obsessed with with Pinocchio from Guillermo del Toro.
Ah, there you go. There you go.
So yeah, I think I could easily watch that movie 1,000 times on that desert island nonstop and not get sick of it.
Absolutely. Now,
So yeah,
I'll say I apologize. At the time that we were recording this, I have not watched it just yet. I want to so badly. I know I need to.
it just came out. I think yesterday or Friday. So it's yeah.
But like, let's be honest. Like, just with the aesthetic that Guillermo was trying to go for in the first place, more than anything else, you knew that was going to be a masterpiece from a mile away. Everyone knew it was going to be a masterpiece.
Of course. Yeah. I think nobody needed to see like any image or anything at all. Just the mix of Guillermo del Toro, Pinocho, like stop motion. Yes, please do whatever the hell you want with it.
It also doesn't hurt that Patrick McHale of Beyond Over the Garden Wall helping out with the script certainly does help add a little bit more intrigue to it. So
yeah. I was not aware that Patrick McHale had co-written the script with Guillermo del Toro, and I remember I've already watched. I watched it twice in the theater in Los Angeles, and I remember there was this just lightheartedness to it. I kind of felt like Greg, the humor that Greg has through the over the garden wall. Like, there was something about him. Like, this looks familiar. It's so like likable and just like genuinely funny. Like, not trying to be funny. It's just actually like the jokes land really well. And when I found out about it, I'm like, of course, that that explains everything.
There you go. But nevertheless, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. That is your answer. You're locking that in.
Yeah.
Then if that's the case, I cannot think of a better way to start the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Nathan Ragland. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. You can support the podcast on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/PMAP. And follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PostmodArtPod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. He is a puppet artist and illustrator with stunning paper-cut puppets making magnificent mythical worlds come to life. Welcome to the podcast, Abraham Matias!
Woo! Hey, that's a great intro. I should include that on my bio on my website.
Hey, you know what? It's there for you. I mean, I'd say go for it. I'm trying to I want to make sure that I give the people at least the first glimpse of what we're going to be talking about, because Abraham, ever since I've gotten introduced to your art or whatnot, I've just been absolutely like stunned with how gorgeous the settings that you create and how the puppetry that you've been able to push out there more than anything else. Like, it's stunning what you've been able to do so far, and that's why I definitely wanted you on this podcast. So thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely. Now, before we really divulge into the stuff you are creating nowadays, I want to go back just a little bit, if I may, and know more or less the origin story of Abraham. What got you interested in art in the first place?
I think I can't remember a time in my life where I haven't been making stuff.
Okay.
A lot of my illustrator friends are always like, "Oh, I was drawing all day." I used to draw a lot as a kid, but I think the image of me as a kid making stuff would be making my own toys, building my own sets. I grew up in Mexico. I'm from Guadalajara, and a lot of times either like movies or shows would come out, and the toys either they didn't exist at all, or sometimes they didn't sell them in Mexico. So my solution to that, I had a craft store right next to my house. So my mom would just give me 50 pesos, which is like $2, and I was able to get plasticine and cardboard and wire and all the stuff, and I would just go and make my own action figures.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and if I wanted to play, I'm like, I need like a set to play. If I'm playing with my Star Wars toys and it's not a spaceship, this is boring, man. So I would just like kind of create the Death Star, or the Lord of the Rings. I would create the castle. So, and yeah, I think that would be like the image of me as a kid.
That's awesome to hear more than anything else. Like, knowing that you went out of your way to create your own art more than anything else because you didn't have the action figure or whatnot, doing the best of your surroundings. Like, that must have been a fun process. Like, even thinking back as a kid, just making that stuff and letting your imagination go wild.
Yeah, I remember my mom used to tell me like, you spend more times building your stuff than actually playing with them. But all right, and I think that was true. I think that was definitely true.
I mean, you could think of like, the inverse of it in a way that like kids tend to beg for the toy more than actually playing with the toy and whatnot. So you're just being, a little bit more hands on with that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I love how you mentioned like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings or whatnot. Were movies like a major part of your life? Was that something that helped really like spark some inspiration and creativity in your life?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think Star Wars definitely. I think for most kids, or a lot of kids, there's like the first introduction to like this huge sci-fi world and just like a mythology inside like a film, right? So that was definitely a big part. But the Lord of the Rings, I think it was another level. Like I was a huge Star Wars fan as a kid, but the Lord of the Rings, it really got me into I don't know, just how deep and realistic something like could be. It felt like I don't know if I'm watching a fantasy movie or like actual medieval history. It's just so well crafted, and then you see how J.R. Tolkien he built a story around a language that he created or languages that he created, and it's like, all right, this just makes perfect sense. How much is rooted in realism, right? Quote unquote. And they had the extended editions from the Lord of the Rings, and they had two DVDs with the behind the scenes.
Yes.
So it was like 4 hours or 8 hours of behind the scenes on the movies. I would have the movies always playing in the back, but I think I watch more the behind the scenes,
Yes.
like on loop from every single movie, and seeing being that introduction. I think that was my first introduction to like, all right, this is how movies get made.
Absolutely.
There's a script, there's the idea, there's a concept art, there's a production, post production, all of that, and it was. I think that up to this day, I can still say I think that was my film school. Pretty much just watching the 8 hour long behind the scenes.
That's a very good point, honestly. Like I was also like one of those kids where like, anytime like my family, my parents would bring home like a new movie or whatnot, depending on what it is, obviously, I would be the first like divulging into the behind the scenes features and special features before actually watching the movie itself.
Yeah. For sure.
That kind of behind the
It
scenes
just gives you a whole new appreciation to it, right?
Exactly. It gives you, it's so fascinating like seeing like actual people like working to create this like fantastic like over the top story that seems like impossible to even imagine, let alone make it to a reality in one way or another.
Yeah, for sure. And that also, like, I think was feeding a lot of my love to make choice. Like they had a part when they used to do the miniatures, or I think they used to call them the bigatures, because they were supposed to be like the miniature sets from the Lord of the Rings, but they were like, it would fill up like an entire soundstage.
Right.
And the attention to detail, I'm like, man, I want to do that in my in my room, in my living room. Yeah. I mean, I probably drove my mom crazy with like all the crap all around the house. Yeah. Even for my choice, I wanted them to have like some sort of like actual fabric and movement, because I hated plastic capes on Batman and on like so I would like chop him off. I would go, this is probably like maybe too much information, but I would go to my mom's drawer and like grab either shirts or sometimes like underwear that, I like this fabric, this would be great. I just cut it off.
I mean, the fabric that some of those things have is incredible.
Yeah. It just had to be the right fabric, the right movement and all of that. So yeah.
Do you remember any of those toys that you would personally say like you were the most proudest of or whatnot? Like thinking back to your youth, like the one that you had the most fun like constructing, or just the one you played with the most?
Oh man, I there was a time that I was a big fan of the Power Rangers.
Okay.
I had some of the Power Rangers, but I hated that they didn't make the villains. There were like no action figures of the villains. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to create my own. Do you remember what was this guy? I think he was on the first like on the very first on the Morphin Rangers, the one with the who's red, like a metal mask.
The
I can't
name
remember
is
the
the
name
name
of
is
that
evading
guy.
me. I know who you're talking about, but the name is evading me so badly.
Yeah, but it was the witch lady, Rita, I think
Yeah,
she
Rita
was called, the
Repulsa.
one with the Rita Repulsa, yeah, and then there was the other guy who was like, it seemed like he was like muscle exposed and just like a red, like an Iron Man. That remember I remember it was a cool one.
That's awesome.
Uh, I think I was part of that one.
That's awesome to hear more than anything else. So I have to know, when did it go from this like general love and passion for art and just crafting in general to a passion and then wanting to make it your career?
So we moved to the U.S. when I was 13.
Okay.
And I think art in there, it became like a great space for me to kind of deal with, like a whole, like an immigrant journey, right? Like a whole country, a new country, a new culture, um, new weather. I moved to Chicago, so like from sunny, beautiful Guadalajara, you go to the snow and the
Yeah.
cold and, minus 20 degrees. That was like a big change. But I think that I knew that I was going to do something with art. I think I can't tell you like there was like a moment where I want to be an artist. It was just such a big part of my life that I just didn't know what was going to be the career. But I knew that I was just going to make something related to art. So in high school, and I was very amazed by this because in Mexico, the art school or the art classes that you take are usually art history classes.
Okay.
At least in my school. Like, oh man, teach art history to 11-year-olds, and you're like, man, you're taking the fun out of the art by teaching me about Botticelli and romanticism. Like, I don't want to do that. I just want to draw. Um, and in high school here in the U.S., we had, you can take photography, painting, printmaking, anything you wanted, right? So that was, and for free. It was like, really, you get all this equipment and for free. You guys are blessed, man, and most of them didn't realize how blessed that art department is. So I think I was taking mostly. I used to love sculpting a lot. I think my main focus in high school was ceramics and sculpture in general. Painting was there a lot as well. And I took a class, a filmmaking class, and I did a couple of short films, very bad short films, but a couple of short films and a stop motion short about some eggs trying to escape their kitchen and not be eaten, kind of like Chicken Run but with eggs. and I just love the whole process also of film. So I kind of had a love for like a lot of different mediums, from sculpture to painting to film. I like photography a lot for a little bit there. So then the challenge was when I had to choose a career. I graduated high school. By the time I think I was a senior, I think I only had to take like 2 or 3 classes. Like it was like the requirements, and after that I could just leave if I wanted to.
Right.
But I was taking like 5 art classes after that. So pretty much my last year in high school, it was kind of like art studio time to just really, just do my thing. And when I had to choose a career, that was kind of a challenge. Because like, all right, do I want to be like a sculptor, a painter? Yeah, that was a bit of a challenge.
Especially with how kind of
think a lot of
immersed you've kind of got yourself with art and all the different aspects of it. I can imagine how hard it is to like narrow it down to like one aspect of art and go with that.
Yeah, and especially, and I mean, I think you're 18 years old, you have to choose the career that you're gonna do for the rest of your life, and you're like, you're 18, you're like an idiot, you don't know what you want in life. And I remember I loved stop motion. I think Coraline had come out during that time, and I was just blown away by the movie itself. Again, more by the behind the scenes stuff. And like I think if I would have seen a career that was about stop motion, I think I probably would have gone somewhere in there to create the puppets, sets, and all. Because I mean, that kind of aligned to you get sculpting, you get painting, you get storytelling, and you get flashbacks from my childhood in there. So it kind of like made sense. But also I remember Avatar had just come out. And you remember Avatar came out and it was like this boom of like every VFX, CGI,
Everyone was go crazy with how gorgeous it was for 2009.
Yeah. And it still holds up. I mean, it's still good, but I remember every college that I would go, their main focus was always VFX, 3D modeling, 3D animation. And I love the result and I love how it looked. And even like Pixar stuff and like all of that, I loved it. But I there was something about just like clicking buttons and doing that I was just not for me. I actually need to have like the physical interaction with what I'm making. And yeah, so ironically, I did do a couple of I went to the Art Institute. Art institutes that just I think they're closed or they're about to all close because there was some like suspicious stuff going in there.
I didn't hear anything about that. I've just always seen the ads for like the art institutes. I haven't heard anything on that.
Yeah, I don't know the whole thing, but there were like I think there was like some scamming involved and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So I was there for about I can't remember if there were semester or quarters, but there were 2 terms. And I was like, well, I guess I'll do VFX because I guess that's a lot. I don't know. Again, you're 18-year-old, you're an idiot, and I just want to study something and not fall behind. But what I like the first year they were like, you can do you'll do the foundations in the first year, and then you can choose what you want to specialize on. I'm like, all right, at least I would have a year with a more focus to just do that. And I started taking drawing, design, some color theory, and I think I was kind of disappointed with the fact that the class, what I was being taught, man, I've seen this in high school. 4 years, you're not teaching me absolutely anything new, and I support that you need to study the fundamentals and really practice and all of that, but the levels there were like basic stuff. And I'm like, the only difference is that in high school I was free, and then over here I'm paying $2,000 for each class, so that doesn't quite add up.
Not really.
So and between that and I was like, I'm not even sure what's a career that I want to study in this place. Maybe I should. So I did, and I went to a community college, and I'm like, I'll just try to get like an associate's in art or something in the meantime while I figure things out. And a friend of mine was studying graphic design in there, and kind of started like digging up in there. I'm like, all right, this could be something. If I'm, I think like a lot of friends that like confused artist friends, we all end up studying graphic design because it's the career that like it'll pay the bills and it's creative. At least it's like a good spot to kind of and I say this with all respect that I have for graphic design because it is. But yeah, I think that was kind of what I went for. And I really did fall in love with graphic design for a little bit there. I'm like, all right, this is cool. I love, like putting in like communication, visual communication, right at the end. And that's what it is. And yeah, that 2 years I studied graphic design. I started getting some jobs here and there, and yeah.
I mean,
it was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, with all the respect with graphic design, like I've talked to a good couple of graphic designers on this podcast or whatnot. There's definitely a good fundamental foundational art form that could come out of that, and there's a lot of opportunities to be really creative with that kind of stuff. I mean, hearing the fact that obviously you fell in love with it, for when you were in it, I mean, that's no slight on graphic design in the first place. It's still art at the end of the day, which, I mean, for you, I could tell, like, even whenever you were a little kid, you've always been an artist. You've always wanted to immerse yourself in art in one aspect for another. And, like, while maybe the priority was, hey, it pays the bills, I can only imagine some of the graphic, knowing what you've been able to produce in other aspects of art, I can only imagine the work that you did when you were a graphic designer must have been at least phenomenal at the end of the day.
No, yeah, I really loved it. I always try to include illustration in all my jobs. In every project, everything, I would be like, we could do it just like this, or we can do an illustration for the poster or for whatever, right? And some jobs were very cool about it. Some other ones like, nope, just do exactly what I say. Just put the type in there and go for it. And I know amazing, talented people with typography.
Mm-hmm.
I love typography, but I think my skill level, when I compare to those passionate, talented, like passionate about typography, like they can tell you the history of each font and who invented it and why it's like I respect it, but I definitely, my interest and my passion don't lie in there. But I graduated college. I was having an internship here in Chicago, and then idea of working in movies and somehow being related to that entertainment industry that was still there.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved to Los Angeles about 6 months after graduating.
Okay.
I'm like, I'll just see if I can, if I'll go in as a graphic designer. Hopefully I'll find some other stuff that I can kind of visualize what else I could be doing. Actually, when I was still in college, I found that there was this position called visual development artist or concept artist.
Yeah.
And I remember I picked up the art of Monsters Inc. The art books of the movies and all that. And it was the first time that it clicked, like, wait, people actually draw this stuff. There's people in the art department that have to come up with the look of the movies, not just like, hey, here's the character animated.
It's not just like magic
that
torch.
It was like a real. Yep. It had never, like, it was the first time that I realized that was an actual job. So also it made sense to go to Los Angeles and maybe try some of that. I think there were the things that I was interested in. Again, trying to how I landed into puppets. It's been like this, like, unconventional journey of, like, I don't know what I want to do until I found it, but I know that I wouldn't have landed on puppets if I hadn't gone through every single one of those areas that you can see in my work today, even if it's not directly correlated to it. But I was interested in visual development, and that, of course, that helped with what I do today. I was also very interested in, like, special effects makeup. Mm-hmm. Like prosthetics and all of that. So yeah, there's like the character creations, the visual development, creating the worlds, creating the illustrations. But I knew that at some point I would have loved to direct something, short films, music videos, whatever. And I knew that it was not going to be live action. In animation, I'm like, it's beautiful, but it takes a long time. I tried to. Yes. One of my first personal projects was trying to get a stop motion short film, going for it, and it requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of time and patience and money, and I'm like, all right, so what else could I be doing? So I started kind of like dabbling in there, and every single one of those, I think it has added to my craft that I do today.
Absolutely. I mean, that's always incredible to hear. And, like, again, going back to what you were saying before, just kind of how you immersed yourself in all these different art forms beforehand, kind of how that's become more or less a culmination of what you're doing and taking the risks more than anything else, like to go out there and try to be a part of that in one aspect for another. Because, I mean, you could probably attest to this. An artist's career is never easy. It is never easy, no matter how you look at it 20 different ways. But, I mean, you have the persistence and the drive to keep going for it. So I'm sure you've been able to find some success in one aspect for another. And I know that eventually led you to what you're probably most prominently known for these days, which is the being a puppet artist. Now, I have to know what intrigued you about that field in the first place, and why did you decide to immerse yourself in that field?
Into puppetry. So up to this point, it was right before the pandemic. I had been working as a graphic designer. I mean, this whole journey took almost 10 years.
Yeah,
pretty
wow.
much. And it's very easy to say it like from this end, like, yeah, everything worked out at the end, but during the process, it like, there was like this just frustration of like, why haven't I found the thing? I have the elements, I have the thing, but I just can't solve this stupid puzzle. And there were a lot of times of frustration, even like a lot of like shame of other friends and other artists that they knew and they had the style and they had the technique and they had all, I'm a storyboard artist. All I do is storyboards and they make storyboard artists. Or like that shame of like I haven't found quite that thing. But as a graphic designer, illustrator, I was doing pretty well during those years. I mean, I had been working in entertainment. I had worked in Disney, HBO, Netflix.
Oh,
wow. Up until recently, I worked at Blizzard for about 2 years, jumping from World of Warcraft, Diablo, Hearthstone, Overwatch, all of that. So I was finding success in graphic design, and they were generally like cool projects that I was actually passionate about. So I remember during the pandemic, it was like, all right, dude, stop trying to like find career in doing this type of art. Why I just wanted it. Also, the world stopped. Was this kind of thing of like, does art even matter right now? Like with so much terrible things going on in the world, and I'm here trying to, draw my way out of this existential crisis. Like, and I think for the first time, I kind of took an approach, at least for the first time since I started my career, or since I was trying to decide my career, I think I gave myself the chance to just be a kid again and create just what I wanted, without a purpose of like, this is going to be on my portfolio, or this is going to be a project to do whatever. No, it was just like, I just want to make art for myself to experiment. And ironically, that was the thing that kind of led me to having a career as a puppet artist.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like those funny things, kind of like sometimes when you let go of the thing, that's how you find the thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really happened like that. I was at this point I was working remotely. It was March or April of 2020, so like the peak of COVID, and I was pretty much working and freelancing. So I was working nonstop from morning till night. And I still wanted to create my own art, and I just didn't want to have to deal with any screens at this point. I'm tired of looking at the screen all day. I want to do something else. So I started just drawing. One day I'm like, what if I cut this thing and, photograph it? And that made sense. That was like, okay, that could be cool. What if I put something behind it and some lights and try to put like some like a little paper theater, and that kind of started evolving to that, and that was just like as working in illustrations. And then one day I was just recording some behind the scenes stuff and like the process. I grabbed the puppet and I literally just like started going like this. I'm like, wait, I'm just like being silly right now, but I think there's something. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool that you can like move something in there, and then that's how I started doing the actual puppetry for animation and all of that.
Right. I mean, like, even just starting off in that first little bit right there, taking like the pieces of paper and adding like foreground and background to it, and adding like layers to it or whatnot. That's a like interesting first step in the first place. Like just having that kind of like lived in experience as you can with a photo with that stuff or whatnot, like that shows your creativity more than anything else. Because I don't know how I would have came to that conclusion in the first place. What inspired you to even like just start with that in the first place? Just starting with like making little paper illustrations or whatnot. Like, was there like a particular thing that kind of grabbed your attention and you were just like, I want to try that? Or is there like other influences on why you decided to go down that path?
I think one of the things from like my thousand interests in art, theater design and like set design and all that, I'm a big fan of like stage productions. Actually, last night we went to see The Lion King here in Chicago. It never fails to blow my mind on just how beautiful the puppets, the sets, the lighting, all of that. So, but it was one of those things that I love, but that I knew that I would probably not go that path. I have a lot of interest for. I think it was that and the stop motion, unsatisfied love that I had that I like. I mean, I've never had the chance to like go into a stop motion production. I think the way that I work right now is very stop motion, like without the stop motion, without the animation, the painstakingly difficult process of animating frame by frame. But in general, it's very similar in the way that I create the sets. I mean, you see those behind the scenes pictures of like the animator going in and like in this huge set of like line or the Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm like, oh man, I want to be there. So in a way, I was able to create that for myself, but just as an illustration process. Right now, I've been starting to experiment with some like adding some more materials into the bodies of the puppets.
Okay.
So I'm making the clothing from actual fabric and all of that, and for the different faces, they're replaceable, so they will have different expressions, different perspectives. It could be a side profile, it could be a front, 3/4, angry, happy, mad, whatever. That's interchangeable. So that's again very stop motion approach to that sense.
I mean, it's easy to see obviously the influence of stop motion in the puppetry you are making. I do want to know, what was it about paper that led to that being the material that you first experiment with? Was it just like the convenience of it, or was there like just, what made that kind of the in this case the clay for your sculpture that would become pottery or puppetry?
Puppets, yeah. I think definitely there was the convenience aspect to it at first. And second, I think paper is like there's nothing more simple than a piece of paper, right? There's nothing more basic than a piece of paper. And there was something about it that I liked. I think in my illustration career before the puppets, or my illustration approach, I wanted a balance between graphic and atmosphere and lighting, and kind of look of that I can't say it's realism, but it's like this very stylized sets and I guess atmosphere. And with the paper, I think I was able to kind of, it was the right balance between those two, making it graphic, and there's nothing more flat or graphic than a paper. But with the entire things having depth and light and all of that, and that, I think that's the reason why it just made sense. Even like intuitively, I think it made sense, because I don't think I ever stopped to question like, wait, do I want to make puppets with paper, or do I want to make puppets with with clay, or like actual like foam puppets or whatever it is? The paper aspect, I think that was just in there.
I mean, it's a good aesthetic in the first place, just having that paper. I mean, especially with what you've been able to do with it and create more or less like an immersive environment for just every single illustration, every single like piece you've been able to do. It's impressive more than anything else. I have to know, whether it is just an illustration or whether it is like a puppetry, what is the process like for you to go from like general concept, whether it be your own or what a customer could be wanting or whatnot? Like, how does it go from concept to final product, absolutely gorgeous, stunning masterpiece at the end of the day?
So it's usually the same process for my own than when I work with a client. So I start mythology and folklore. It's always a big inspiration for my work. So I I read a lot of mythology and tales, and then some of them I'll be like, all right, I wanna make something when they illustrate a specific scene. Um, it all starts with a sketch, the idea, the sketch, trying to come up with like an interesting composition, and after I kind of land on an idea, I start cutting up the puppets. I work with different sets. I work in as small as like a shoebox.
Yeah.
It was literally a shoebox that I just cut the back, and that would be like the backdrop of the set. So the puppets were pretty small. And I've also worked in. I got this wooden IKEA shelf that had like racks on the bottom, so I could just like go in and put. But it was like a pretty big set, so I think that's the biggest one
That's smart.
that I. And it's your size, so you don't have to be like like crouching or like kneeling down. Right now, I'm working on it's called a multiplane camera, which is what Lotte Reiniger, who was I believe she was German. She was one of the first animation directors. She has, I think she adapted, what's it called, Arabian Nights. Without
like 1,000 Nights or whatnot in Arabia, something along the
a
lines.
thousand nights, yeah. It was called The Adventures of Prince something. I'm gonna butcher the name. So, but you can look it up. It's really cool. It's all shadow puppetry, and not stop motion animation. And then Walt Disney started to use that technique as well in White, Pinocchio, Bambi, and it's basically glass panels. The camera's on the top, and each glass panel has like a different layer of the set, the environment.
Okay.
And he was able to either push them close enough, separate them, or slide them in. So that's how they were shooting all those kind of like the golden age of the Disney films.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I've been approaching it right now. I'm working right now on a short film based on the Greek myth of Icarus.
Right.
Icarus and Daedalus. It's been taking a little longer than than I expected, but I'm learning to be patient and not rush those things.
Valid.
But I kind of had invented, sort of the way of like, how can I make this with the tools that I have available? I got a shelf from IKEA with glass panels, so that's kind of like my multi-plane camera from an IKEA shelf, which cost like $40. So that was
Ingenuity
that
was
was like a
finest.
very inexpensive. Yeah. The only thing is that because it's lower, I have to be, kind of like looking down. And by the end of the day, my back I'm 30 years old now, so my back is not, it can't handle that pressure. So yeah, just always trying to find ways of experimenting. All of them have, pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
Working with the other shop where I was like, everything was standing up. It was great because there was a scene in my short film that I wanted to have some water. So I cut up from paper, I made some waves, and I hang them with strings. I would just be able to like push them and they would swing back and forth. I would take that and then just like kind of like animate whatever this thing was going on, and it was like a lot of like movement in there. The problem was for other things, if I wanted to put some trees or stuff like that, things stand and not fall was like 70% of the job. Because the minimal push or something and everything would fall out. I'm like, all right, let me try to put everything back together again. So the multiplane is great because gravity is not an issue, because I can just literally just put them on the panel and I don't have to worry about how they're gonna stand up or anything. Working with reflections, I think that's the main challenge with that. Making sure that a lot of times I'm like, I love how this scene turned out, but then you can see the lens of the camera reflected on the glass. I'm like, never mind. I'll have to go back and find like a way for that to not be an issue.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, goodness, just hearing kind of more or less the process for you That's exactly what I was more or less like. I don't want to say this what I was anticipating, because I know it can't just be easy, because you can correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of the stuff, it's all just you doing it. Like, you alone are the one that's like making these environments. You're setting everything up. You're trying to make everything work in flow or whatnot. Like, it's got to be interesting, more or less, like not only going forth with this path, but kind of being the only person, at least for the time being, like making this stuff a reality. Like, do you appreciate that kind of challenge? Is that something you've kind of more or less accepted?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I think, and on my on the problem with me deciding on a career specifically was like I wanted to do everything, but especially in the animation industry, you can't do everything. You kind of have to select on one specific position. So you want to do storyboard, you have to be a storyboard artist. Or you want to be a character designer, you have to be a character designer. It's very machinery like in that way, right? Everybody is crucial and everybody has to do their job well. And on this process, I think I'm able to be the writer, to do the storyboard, to design the characters, to shoot, to edit. But yeah, I think that gives me a lot of satisfaction for sure. And I think that's the creative satisfaction of I want to have my hands on in everything. I think because every piece really is a challenge, like if it starts to get easy, I'm like, all right, I already know exactly how to approach this. I start, I always set myself up to like, how can I make a different approach? How can I make this challenging?
Right.
And I think that's what keeps me interested in it. If I become very robotic, like all right, I know exactly what I'm doing, I think that starts to just get boring, and it shows in the piece. I see there's a couple of pieces there that I've done that I'm personally not very happy with. Other people are like, it looks great. I don't know why you're trashing your art so much, but for me, it's like I don't know if it's the piece necessarily, but making it was just so predictable. Right. And it just made it boring, And it's kind of like when you play video games. It has to be on that sweet spot. That it's not too difficult. It's not too easy, but it's that sweet spot.
Right. It's
challenging enough.
Yeah, it's figuring out what your boundaries are, what you are capable of, and seeing how much further you can push it. See what you're capable of. See what you can do to kind of introduce a new element to it to make it a little bit more intriguing, especially for you. And I especially imagine that, like, for you, a part of that is not just like how you're going forth with the process or whatnot, but the stories you're trying to tell with that process. I noticed that a lot of your stuff is based in some sort of mythology of just about every single kind. Last I checked, what is it about mythology that like creatively like drives you, especially towards like the illustration puppetry route?
I think at first it's just like these fantastical stories, like I mean the fact that that they're the first stories that we told as humans. You have from Mesopotamia, you have from ancient Egypt, ancient Greece. There's something fascinating of like how telling stories is not something that we do to make money. Maybe in a lot of movie studios, their main focus is how much it's gonna do on the opening weekend and all of that, and it transcends that, right? It transcends capitalism. And there's something so fundamental for us as humans to tell stories, and I think just that it's enough for me to like I want to know what these stories were. What were people. What was the point? There's no real value, at least physical value, that a story provides to humans, right? It's not like food, shelter, water, whatever. But it feeds something in us, right? It feeds the spirit in all of us as cultures, as humans, and I think that's very beautiful. And then you have cosmic dragons, and they cut them up, and that's how the universe was made. I'm like, all right, come on, who could not love this stuff? So yeah. I think that's the thing. Greek mythology, I think it was, as most people, I think that's like the initial, the introduction to myth. Since high school, I loved it. When I was studying digital illustration and practicing. I think my first paintings were of Greek mythology, of Persephone. I remember Hades and Persephone was one of the first digital paintings that I made.
Okay.
And they were, and like the myths were always there. Even the stuff that I like, I think even the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and all of that, that's just mythological structure right there, and the mythological
really
world building. So yeah, and I think during the pandemic, it was when Greek mythology really just became like a safe haven, and the world falling apart. Like, all right, I can just go in the stories and everything will be okay. I think at the end, that's kind of like a lot of the stories, kind of say that, like, hey, terrible things happen and terrible things have happened throughout history. We're okay, we're gonna be okay. And I think, especially during that year, it was a great message to kind of hold on, to balance out every single day reading terrible news. There was a terrible thing happening every single day. It was like a bombard of bad news. So yeah.
It just seemed like after a while, especially in that year, it's just like, Jesus Christ, where in the myth does it say this? All right, I don't remember any myth saying specifically these certain things that were going down. I was gonna say like especially like I could tell it's still a major influence. I mean, we're talking right now, and you're wearing a what's her name, a Medusa shirt right now. Like,
oh yeah, a Medusa.
It's like I could tell some major.
I saw this one. This was not planned, by the way.
Yeah, right.
This outfit was not planned.
It totally wasn't planned. I did put on this shirt just for this occasion. No. But obviously, like I could tell still major influence. Like you said yourself, one of the things you're currently working on is an Icarus puppetry more than anything else. Which I mean, I've seen little bits of here and there, and what little bits are presented out there and whatnot. Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous what you're able to do more than anything else. Like have that good like visual storytelling, like right there of a very well known story of obviously the boy that flew too high, too close to the sun more than anything else. Like I from what I've been able to see of it, I'm certainly excited to know what you're gonna be working on next when it comes to that more than anything else, because I can imagine like what inspired you to want to tell that story, especially through puppetry.
I mean, it's been on my, and I think I hope that this year I'm going to be able to tackle this a little bit more. But I really wanted to find a way to tell these stories through puppetry, and kind of create like an actual thing of like, this is like myths, folklore, puppets, in a very accessible way. The thing with this approach that I took specifically for this myth, I illustrated everything digitally, printed it out, cut up everything, and then make the puppet. So I'm able to have like a lot more realistic stuff, I guess, that you can achieve digitally than traditionally, like some stuff from my short film called Folklore.
Right.
I was all, and I wanted to have a very paper, handmade kind of look. For this one, I think the main challenge has been I'm trying to remember that it is puppetry, it is paper puppetry, and I love the fact that you see the strings on the puppets. Maybe not the literal strings, but I think we've been taught so much, or not taught, but we celebrated the things. Like we were mentioning, like Avatar, like, oh my God, look how realistic that looks. A movie comes out, like Toy Story, I remember there were like articles are like, oh my God, you can see like the fabric on Woody's shirt, and
right.
and this and it is very impressive, right? It's the time and effort that it takes to get to that level. It's very inspiring, but going back to how much I love seeing the behind the scenes stuff. I was like, the imperfections that revealed how that thing was made. That for me is the most amazing part of it. So I'm finding myself now trying to balance this part of my brain that's been trained to hide the strings and to make it perfect and to make it, the most realistic version of it. To like, no, there's something so so simple of literally grabbing a puppet and like going like this on a camera.
Yes.
Literally just that, there's like a lot of times we don't need more than that. Anything else, it might be just it's distractions. Distractions of
it's
like
a fun little charm of seeing that kind of like handcrafted, aspect of it more than anything else that I love, especially with your stuff. Just the charm that it has whenever you see just how like simple but yet how immersed it is.
yeah, and I think for this film, I kind of went on the other side of like I'm trying to hide strings a little bit in this piece, and I'm finding myself at this point of like, all right, hold on, I like this new approach because it challenges me, and it's been like a whole new challenge to get it done. But just not forgetting that they're puppets, and it's gonna look like a puppet, and it doesn't need to look like anything else.
Right.
I don't want it to look like anything else, So kind of remembering to stay in there, to honor the inanimate object that you're just giving a little bit push of life in there. But your question was why this myth? Sorry, I
Hey,
deviated from that.
This is a podcast. I encourage rambling. I encourage the deviations. I was along
All
for
right.
the ride.
All right, great. I tend to do that a lot, so I think it might be my ADHD. But
oh, you know what? I enjoy it. I've been enjoying every single second so far, so you're good.
All right, great. But I remember, I think Greek mythology, and probably one of the images that will come up in there is Icarus, right? And it's one of the most well-known myths in there. And I reread the myth, and I was very interested by the fact that it is called Icarus, or it is Icarus is the most well-known figure in that myth, but the story really is about his father, Daedalus,
Yeah.
who is the inventor. And I think, Daedalus does pretty horrible things because he's talented, but he's a very proud man. So he actually commits murder to, stay in that position of popularity. But I wanted to approach it in a way that I think I saw myself in Daedalus in the fact of as an artist, of just trying to make it as an artist. So I wanted to explore a little bit of that, what it is like sometimes to go so much into your craft and trying to make something of yourself as an artist, and in the way sometimes missing or losing the important stuff at the end because of trying to chase that dream. So yeah, for me, I moved from Chicago. I left my family and went to Los Angeles. That was hard, but I wanted to do it because my career and my art and all of that.
Right.
And my niece, she like my little sister basically, and she's 15 years old right now. I left when she was 5. So I kind of like miss a bunch of chunks from her childhood, and looking back, it's not something that I say like, oh, I should have never left. I'm very happy of the things that I was able to do. There were some other things that I'm like, we're gonna get that certain moments back, and I guess there were many years that I was very frustrated with my career. It was not where I wanted it to be.
Right.
But I look back right now and I look at it objectively. I'm like, I was having a great time. I was having a good time. I had good friends. I was, like in this new city and all of that.
Yeah.
And I guess not that I didn't appreciate it, but it was very clouded by this idea of my career is not where I wanted it to be. There's something more to accomplish, and I think it's about finding that balance, of pursuing what you love, but not missing out on what's already there. And I think that's kind of the approach that I wanted to take on the myth. Icarus is the one that flies too close to the sun and he dies, but at the end of the day, I think Daedalus is the one that's been flying too close to the sun for his entire life.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's kind of like the take that I wanted to get into I don't know if it's modernizing it in a bit, but just making it more relevant to at least to my own experience, right?
Like obviously, like yeah, make it more of a, I guess, personal for you, and like obviously telling the story that you feel like needs to be told more than anything else, like considering your experience, what you've been through, and obviously reading the story and realizing that, you know, at least in your opinion, it's been more or less misinterpreted for, you know, most of the lifetime, because people obviously think of Icarus being the one flying too close to the sun. Like, it's obviously his fault. What he knew he shouldn't have been up there, but at the same time, like you were saying, you know, that perspective of the dad, you know, kind of being proud and just doing what he can, or doing what he does. Like, I get that. I understand where you're coming from, and I'm intrigued, like I said before, like seeing how you're going to be interpreting that into your puppetry and into the paper more than anything else, because I can only imagine, especially with, again, the little taste you have before, more than anything else, like knowing the thought process, the love and the care that's going into this story or whatnot. I can only imagine how gorgeous of a story that's going to be told.
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully it'll come out in the next couple of months. I hope.
I mean, hey, if nothing else, I think everyone here can agree. Take your time. You're doing a good job as it is. I mean, we kind of touched on it with some of your other pieces, but I did want to talk about folklore a little bit, because I saw the little bits that I could of that piece or whatnot. You want to talk about stunning. You want to talk about gorgeous. The environment that you created with folklore alone, like, you had me at the edge of my seat with that kind of stuff. Seeing like the little intricacies that you add, the little details to add the environment or whatnot. Like, what inspired you to make that piece, if I may ask?
So I took a little trip to a town in California called Solvang, which is like a little Danish town. It's about 2 hours from LA. And it's literally like, you know, like the tiny houses, like very European, bakeries everywhere, Danish pastries. It's a very quaint little town, and they had a bookstore which is dedicated to Hans Christian Andersen, who is the author of The Little Mermaid and a bunch of other fairy tales. He was Danish, so it was kind of like a tribute to him.
Okay.
And I came across a book on Scandinavian folk tales, and I've been wanting to kind of take a break from myths and explore a little bit more on folklore and on folk tales. And I didn't want to go the usual Brothers Grimm tales, and I think their tales are great, but we've heard them a lot of times, right? I mean, how many Little Red Riding Hoods have we already heard, and Snow White and all of that, right? So I found the Scandinavian tales had all the elements of a traditional fairy tale, very European in that sense, very in, you know, the forest and witches and trolls and the devil and all of that. But it was such a like a fresh take. I mean, I think fresh take, like if they're new, they're like hundreds of years old. But I just haven't.
It's kind of like what you were talking about before when it came to, like, you know, you knew what the boundaries are. Like, you've seen these stories a million times over. You know kind of how they're told. Like, you see the boundaries or whatnot in the Scandinavian tales, at least in your eyes, kind of push that boundary a little bit, and how they kind of told it, how the story is resolved more than anything else. I can imagine how that piqued your interest more than anything else.
Yeah. And I think, you know, how they say there's nothing new. We can't do anything new. We just were able to add something to that old thing and make it new and make it fresh. And I think Scandinavian folktales, I think it did that for me. Like, all right, I've been in this world before, but you're telling me in a different way, you know. So I started reading the book. I haven't done a short film before at this point. I had just only played some things here and there, but never like kind of like, and it's nothing longer than like an Instagram reel or anything like that. So I got the book, I came back, and I gotta say, I think it's been one of the healthiest creative processes I've had in my life.
That's awesome to hear.
It was, you know, it was just like being very like kind of like hypnotized, like intoxicated by these tales, and just getting to my studio, building the sets, building the puppets, and not one single point was I like, sometimes you're working and the critic comes on and you start like, oh, this is crap, it doesn't work. That that or like even like I have no idea what I'm doing this, like this is stupid, I should never try it in the first place. It never happened. It was just like me going in the studio, building the stuff, trying to figure it out. And it requires a lot of tries to get it right. But I was not frustrated at any point of this of that short film. And because it was my first little short film, I was debating whether doing a full story or more of like a collection of moments, kind of like which is what the short film is. It has a song and it has different clips of the different tales. So there's not like a single narrative, because I just wanted to really just get into that world and kind of see how that world felt. Even to peak that interest in people. Like, hey, maybe you watch the short film and you're like, hey, I wanna know about Scandinavian folk tales. Let me go pick up a book, or let me read something. And yeah, I think that was what inspired it.
I mean, that's awesome to hear, and especially seeing what you were able to produce for it, what little bits I have been able to see of it more than anything else. Like, goodness, that is just like stunning what you've been able to do with those tales or whatnot. And I mean, it's cool hearing that you're like going all in and making these cool like personal projects more than anything else with the stuff that you love, because I know that the personal projects more than anything else has led to some incredible opportunities. And I just want to talk about, just right off the bat, the biggest opportunity that, at least in my eyes, you've had or whatnot, and that's being able to animate a little short music video for Nick Jr. more than anything else with Puff the Magic Dragon. How did that opportunity come to you in the first place? I have to know.
Yeah, I think that's been like, I still have a hard time like realizing that. Wait, you're talking about me? Did I do that? I It's funny because most of the jobs that I've done a couple of book covers for HarperCollins and Macmillan.
Right.
All that stuff. I reach out to art directors. I send out my work. None of them have come through with anything. A lot of times either I don't get an answer back, which is the usual, and art directors are pretty busy people.
Yeah.
But they told me, I have your contact. It's just like, I'm waiting. If something comes through, I'll contact you, right? But I remember there was actually the trip that I took to Solvang. I had been trying and I received like 30 no's in 1 week.
Oh, wow.
And I went to the trip and I'm like, I don't want to be an illustrator anymore. This is too hard. I just give up.
Oh, no.
And then the next day I wake up with an email from an art director from HarperCollins saying like, hey, I found your work. I have a Greek mythology cover if you're interested in it. We would love to have you on board. I'm like, all right. So the secret is to give up. To give up on life and it will come to you.
You hear that, artists all around the world? Just quit. Just stop what you're doing, and everything will come to you when you least expect it.
And I remember I'm part of an animation organization here in Los Angeles, and they send sometimes some job postings and whatnot, and they sent over a job like, hey, there's this production studio that is looking for freelance animators.
Okay.
You want to reach out? Here's your email. So I send them over my short film, Folklore. I think I sent them over maybe a month. Yeah, it was like a month after I had finished the short film. And I'm like, hey, so it's not maybe the animation that you're looking for is not 2D, not 3D, stop motion, puppetry. But if you're interested, I would love to learn more about the project and all of that. I didn't hear back from them probably for 2 months, even longer. I'm used to that. So I was like, this is, one of the many emails that you send that the job doesn't happen.
Right.
And then they reach back like, hey, we're so sorry. We're just getting back to you. You've been trying to, figure everything out in production and all that, but we love your stuff. We would love to have you create one music video to give you some insight. It's for Nick Jr. or we're revamping kind of like this character face, which was from Blue's Clues back in the 90s.
Yep.
We're giving him like a design of the character. We're giving him his own show. It's gonna be like sing-alongs, and of course I'm reading that and I'm like, get out of here. It's Nick Jr.'s. Really, it's for Nickelodeon. Yeah, I mean, I think immediately the imposter syndrome comes in, and I was like, "Are you sure they're like stupid puppets? Like, are you sure it's like worthy of like Nickelodeon and Nick Jr.?" And it was honestly, I think it's been up to this day my favorite project that I've ever worked on.
Okay.
It was they gave me creative freedom. It was actual creative freedom because a lot of times, the client's like, you have total creative freedom, but then you don't. And they're like, nope, not that. Nope, creative freedom, but don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. It's in this job now. It was like absolute creative freedom. Come up with the characters, come up with like kind of like the story, of course, is based on Puff the Magic Dragon.
Right.
So grab inspiration from that song. I think the only feedback that I had on the first initial sketches, there were some of them that were kind of creepy. There were like some forest giants and stuff, and they're like, we love everything, but the giants have to go because it's a show for like little kids.
Yeah.
It's a pre-K show, so I'm like, all right. And I sent out the animatic. It was approved. I think we shot that in a weekend actually.
Oh wow.
So I spent a couple of weeks creating all the puppets, creating the sets, making like a breakdown of kind of like the production and all of that. I think I had about 3 months to do the whole thing, 3 or 2 months, I can't remember. So I kind of broke down like, okay, by this time I want to have the animatic approved. By this time I need to have the sets and the puppets done. And I called a couple of friends to help me out. Because from folklore, one of the main challenges was having the camera animating, kind of looking at the camera to see like everything is in focus. I went back probably like 20 times just trying to, I'm like, nope, this is not what I wanted to look. It was a great shot, but it was not in focus.
Right.
So I called a good friend of mine who was, we were roommates back in the past, and he's a director. I'm like, hey, he's a director, and he knows all about cameras and all of that. So he brought the camera. I had some friends telling like, I just need you literally to just hold the puppet. Yeah. Just, that's it. Just so it doesn't fall over. That's your job. So yeah, we came into my studio. We did it was a weekend. It was a Saturday and a Sunday. We shot through there. I edited the whole thing. And I had a friend help me out with some VFX. So adding some of the blinks, the eyes, some particles, some light flares, all of that, and yeah, it was a very smooth process.
I mean, if I do say like it was a smooth process to what ended up being a smooth music video more than anything else, like it was stunning. The environment you created for Puff the Dragon more than anything else. I love. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like I love the charm that you have with these puppets and the puppetries that you've been pushing forward and whatnot. Like seeing pieces like that, seeing the illustrations that you've done. I personally am a huge fan of the ones you did for Over the Garden Wall and The Mandalorian. Like the little illustrations you did for that. Like it's stunning. It amazes me more than anything else seeing like the stunning finished product that you have, and only imagining the amount of time and effort that goes into something like that. Considering the fact that this starts off as just like random just sheets of paper that you anyone can pick up, and like thinking of the time and dedication you have to put that, like, does it amaze you more or less like what you're able to accomplish with this field that you've immersed yourself in?
I think there's definitely something about taking, and I think that's the art process in general, right? Like taking something that's not there, like a blank canvas or a piece of clay, and making something out of it. I think there's like a rewarding sense. I think the reward that you get of seeing the work out there or seeing it recognized, that's a part of it, right? But then there's the reward of the actual making. Mm-hmm. and not even in a sense that, oh, I made this, or like, oh, this piece of paper transformed into this. That's just like that's like very magical. I think seeing that, and then seeing it together with, I think specifically with the puppets and the puppet short films, taking paper, making a beautiful puppet, and then seeing it all together in a stage with props, with lighting, then add music, and then add VFX, and it's like, all right, this is like I cannot imagine anything for me more just satisfying than seeing that process and being involved in every single step of that process.
Absolutely, and of course, obviously, seeing the final product and seeing what you're able to push out there more than anything else, like I can only imagine the amount of pride when everything is said and done that you have in your piece, whether you nitpick it or not. The amount of pride at the end of the day you have to have for that, and seeing especially other people like more or less getting on board with that stuff and absolutely loving and adoring the stuff you're pushing out there. Are you amazed with more or less like the community you've been able to build, or at least like the the audience you've been able to build with these pieces that you've been able to push out?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think just seeing people react so positively to the puppets, it really gives it. It's like that cherry on top, you know. Like not only the process is super rewarding, but when receiving the love of people, like, hey, this is wow, this is amazing. It's just it's definitely very satisfying. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, you know, because I remember before the puppets, or even during my first couple of years when I was trying to, putting out this stuff out there and all of that. There's that trick of social media, right? Of like kind of like wanting that validation. So, I would post some stuff online that I love, and not having the engagement, it's been something that I've had to kind of retrain myself. And even at this point, I still, some days are better than others.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's knowing the difference of, this is not a matter of quality of the work. This is not a matter of me personally as an artist. It might be a matter of stupid algorithm, you know.
True.
But sometimes you don't. It's the brain takes plays tricks on you, and it's like, nope. That's why people are not liking it or not, sharing it and whatnot. But I think when I found the puppets, I was able to say, okay, right now I have 1,000 followers or 2,000 followers or 3,000 followers. I don't know if it's part of growing up, but I've learned, I think, in the past 2 years of not looking for social media for validation on my work. And it's way easier said than done, right? But I think it's been about forming also connections with people. The people that I studied with, other artists, kind of had that one-on-one interaction. I think that's been a lot. And also, I mean, the fact that, like, all right, if I post something and it gets 10 likes, I don't care, because I did a music video for Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
I much rather get paid for work than to get likes on Instagram, because I'm gonna pay my bills then. So yeah, I mean, I think right now I had this reel that kind of blew up a little bit there. So I've been getting a lot of love on Instagram lately for the pieces, and it's funny because for the longest time, like, oh my god, I wish I had, like a bigger audience and all of that. And I see that it's growing, and I'm feel very fortunate to have, to receive, the appreciation of a lot of people out there. But I think and I don't know if this happened because, or it had to align or whatever, but I think I was able to find that appreciation for my own stuff before other people would appreciate it, in that kind of sense. Yeah, I mean, I think at some point I was very desperately trying to like, please like my art. I just posted something, please like, and it became this place of like, I like my art. I post it online. If it reaches people, great. But if not, I was able to kind of work on that self confidence as an artist to say like, hey, I'm proud of the stuff that I do, regardless of the number of likes, comments, shares, whatever that is. But yeah.
That's awesome to hear more than anything else. Like having that kind of mentality developing, especially as you go along this art path and this art journey more than anything else. Considering the years that is going on behind it, the fact that you've picked up stuff like that, like thinking back of your entire art journey as well, like ever since you were a kid or whatnot, does it amaze you more or less how far you've been able to come?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am. Sometimes it doesn't feel real. I guess stuff like the Nickelodeon stuff is like, oh wait, this is not. Something's gonna happen, and the show's gonna get canceled probably. So this is not gonna like end up happening, right? But yeah, I think I'm at a point in my career, in my life where I'm finally able to do that jump of, hey, I'm an artist and I'm able to make a living out of my art. And I think I found myself trying to, kind of have to like update how I see myself and stop seeing myself as a struggling artist and kind of embody this place where I am right now. Like this is how I make a living. I I mean, I think it's been 10 years of having that struggling, starving artist mentality, and like nobody shares my stuff, nobody sees this. Well, valuing myself, not self worth, but my art worth with how much social interaction it had, how much type of projects that was coming in, and I think right now it's been very obvious the fact that I'm trying to make that update on how I see myself. Just been very I'm super grateful right now at this point in my career. I mean, I think it's been, like I said, a 10-year journey, and sometimes the thought appears here and there like, imagine if you would have found the puppets when you were 18, where would you be right now?
Right.
But right there I'm like, wait, I wouldn't have arrived to this point if I hadn't made all the steps in order to get here,
Yeah.
And I think that's been one of the things that has been the most challenging. It's been having patience, having patience of you're gonna take a bunch of detours, or that it seems that you're lost, but you're not lost. You're just picking up the tools in order to get to where you are. And there's a podcast with Andy J. Pizza, the creative pep talk, and there was he's a great artist, and he just does a lot of like motivational pep talks for artists. There was one thing he said, and I think it just really resonated with me, and it's you start to play The Legend of Zelda, for example, or any of those open world games, you can go straight to the castle and straight to the biggest challenge, and they're probably going to beat your ass. Or you can do all these side quests and get the tools that you need, get the armor that you need, get the weapons that you need, get all the stuff that you need in order to go and face that, that castle. And I think that's kind of like the journey, how it is, right? I mean, I had to be a graphic designer, and probably being a graphic designer has helped me to become a better artist and to make better puppets. It's given me a sense of simplicity, of making things graphic, making things readable. Even on the way that I work, I'm probably more organized on the way that on my workflow because of my graphic design experience.
Right.
So stuff here and there that you see, that everything adds to the final product. And if it looks like a mess when you're in it, because it really does, it looks like you have no idea what you're doing, and I probably didn't have any idea what I was doing, it just makes sense when you see it from afar. You're like, okay, I see why. I see how everything added up to this.
Yeah, that's wonderfully worded, and obviously a good reflection more than anything else. Like, honestly, when you were talking about that, I think about, like, this podcast itself. There are times to where I've discussed this with a couple of other guests, but I've thought to myself, imagine if I had started this podcast like 5 or 10 years earlier or something like that. If I had just hunkered down and tried to find something. But I also think that, like, if I did it then when I actually did start it or whatnot, like, I wouldn't have like the same appreciation for the artist now that I did back then. I wouldn't have kind of the same skills that I've more or less developed, getting to have this connectability with people or whatnot. I wouldn't have kind of the resources then that I would have now or whatnot. So it's always it's always interesting to have that reflection, but at the same time, like, you can attest to this. You can't really go back and change the past at this point. Like, you can only take the experience that you have, learn from it, and apply it to what you're doing now. And I mean, if nothing else, if I do say so, the stuff you're applying it to nowadays or whatnot, I think it's been worth every single step of that journey so far. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think exactly what you said, having you walk the road and you pick up the skills necessary, so then when the opportunity arises or something happens, you have the skills, right? If the Nickelodeon stuff would have happened 4 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to do what I did. If the book covers would have happened a couple of years ago, maybe I wouldn't have had the skills necessary to deliver a good product. And yeah, patience, man. I think that's the thing. Like, we are so very used to instant gratification, and we like fast things, right? We are, the microwave culture of, like, set it for a minute and it'll be ready, and it's not like that. And we have and the waiting. I'm rereading this book called Atomic Habits. And it talks about something that is how we expect things to go, and is it linear, upwards and linear, but it's usually not. It's curved. So there's this point of you're working on stuff and you don't see it happening. You plant something and it doesn't sprout, and that's what it's called. You start going to the gym and you're not immediately ripped by the first week. Like, oh, this doesn't work. This is a waste of time. Same with art, same with everything. And it's like, this doesn't work. And it's I think he calls it the value of desperation, of the expectations that you have, which is linear and upwards, and then reality. And there's this little, like, this valley. That's where a lot of us give up, right? It's like, if I'm not seeing something right now, then it must not be working. And he gives the example, I think, of a bamboo. The way that bamboos grow, you put the seed in and they don't grow for years, not even like a tiny little, no. And then after a certain amount of years, it just grows exponentially. And that's how we call, like, oh, he was an overnight success. And most people are like, well, that overnight success has been, years and years of perfecting the craft of that person.
Right.
And in the meantime, you're that bamboo in the ground, working and not being able to see those results, right? And I think that's a challenge for any human being. It's putting in the time and not seeing that reward. I think that's, I remember that was one of the most frustrating feelings of, like, dude, I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm putting time and effort into my craft. I'm trying to promote it on social media. I'm going to conventions. I'm taking classes. What is happening? Why am I not seeing that? And it's about that patience. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a week, in a month, in a year. For me, it took me 10 years. And if I would go back, I would not have it any other way. I think everything that I learned has made me the artist that I am today. I think I would have just, if I could go back and say something to myself on those times, would be like, chill, like, don't it. And it's hard, but it's to attach kind of like your self-worth to your art or your career, we do that all the time. And I guess for me it was like, whoa, but it's art. It's not like I want to be like, it's art. It's more, it's noble. It's, it's whatever. Like, it's at the end of the day, the same thing.
Yep.
If you know, valuing your self-worth and where you are in life through this art career and through any career really. But yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the thing, you know.
Yeah, it's part of the creative process at the end of the day. That's wonderful words to live by more than anything else. Abraham, we've been talking a good bit when it comes to just the art you've done, the journey you've been on, and I've loved every single bit of this discussion. But for this next question, if I may, I want to go a little bit above and beyond. I want to go unrealistic. I want to go out there. I want to give you more or less the dream scenario, if I may. Let's say I am Big Shot Mr. Moneybags. I come up to you and I'm like, look, Abraham, we know you've been able to do some incredible stuff. We saw your Puff the Magic Dragon music video. We've seen Folklore. We've seen all the stuff you've been producing. And we know you can do so much more. We just want to give you that little extra, bump, that little extra push if possible. We have connections to anyone and everyone in whatever industry possible, and more money than it should be possible. We probably should be investing in something like homeless shelters, stuff like that. We'll focus on that a little bit. Right now, we are focusing on you and you alone. If given this opportunity, what would be the dream Abraham Matias project?
And I think I've had this idea for a very long time, for a feature film.
Okay.
Which is like a take on immigration mixed with fantasy and kind of, this traditional tale on Alice in Wonderland,
okay,
The Wizard of Oz, but in a take of an immigrant kid, very rooted in Mesoamerican culture and all of that. And yeah, I think that would be it. Sometimes I think like, well, maybe it's puppetry. Will people even be interested in a feature film made of puppetry? But I know that that's my own brain canceling my dream. People are not going to be interested in that. Self-sabotaging as usual.
Yeah.
But no, I think definitely that would be it. I think we'd be able to collaborate with a team of writers, or a writer or a writer buddy, co-writer, different artists, kind of like, I think with Puff the Magic Dragon, being able to work with people, as much as I do love working by myself and be able to have my hands on everything, there's something really cool about working with people and being on set with people and that idea back and forth on ideas, on perspectives, on that kind of stuff. I think that would be the dream scenario.
Well, that's what I definitely want to see, especially knowing the storytelling techniques you're able to implement and whatever, the collaboration aspect, and seeing the visuals you could potentially have in it, whether it is puppetry or not, puppetry, stop motion, however you want to tell this story. I definitely want to see that more than anything else. I mean, as Mr. Moneybags, obviously, I think it'd be money well spent, if I do say so myself. But sadly, we gotta get down from the dream scenario. We gotta get back to reality, and I'll ask the ever so generic question: where do you hope to see yourself, say, 5 to 10 years from now?
10 years from now, I think during those 5 years, the things that I would like to be able to accomplish. One, I would love to publish a book, a picture book, or maybe more than one.
Hey.
But that's definitely on my checklist, to be able to tell stories, illustrated stories, with the puppets. I think that's one. To be able, I really love traveling. I think it's really healthy for my creativity and just in general. I love seeing different cultures, different cities. I think that keep me fresh. So not necessarily becoming a nomad, but being able to take the puppets, traveling puppets, if you were like, hey, I want to spend 6 months in Greece, I want to spend 4 months in Spain, or go back to Mexico for some time.
Okay.
Kind of like that lifestyle. I think that's something that I would love to do. And um, with the myths and the folklore and all of that, I would love to be able to have at least one short film every year, of
Okay.
different myths. If it's more, that would be amazing. But kind of have like that personal goal of achieving that. One more thing, also getting involved in theater somehow.
Okay.
I would love to explore more than paper puppets, kind of dive into the world of theatrical puppets and big puppets and all of that. I think performance is something that makes me super nervous. Something that is like the good kind of nervous. Like I want to see how that feels.
Yeah.
I appreciate live performances so much, whether it's music or theater. I think it's something that is so different from what we usually see in our tiny screens, how we consume so much of the art that's out there.
Right.
And seeing something live, it's magical. So I think that's something that I would also love to tackle.
I'd
this
love to
next 5 years.
I'd love to see that for all of those. I'd love to see all of that for you, because I can only imagine how incredible it is. I just wanted to say this funny little joke. Theatrical puppets, I believe they're called actors. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, I think so. Right? I think that's a term.
As we start to wind down the interview, I just have one last question I want to ask. Obviously, you've been deeply entrenched in art for as long as you can remember, whether it be the action figures you were making when you were a child to what you're doing nowadays. How important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
And for me, I think I just can't. Basically, my life without art would be extremely boring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you take that out of the equation, I just don't see what do people do on their free time. Like I mean, for me, like I cannot imagine just like not having ideas and to create. I think that I don't want to say that it's the purpose of my life, because I don't think there's the thing like it's one purpose. It enriches my life in ways that few things can. Um, during the pandemic, it was really a transformative year, not only in my career that I found the puppets and my art and all of that. But for me, the idea of you're gonna have to go on lockdown and interact with very few people, and just be in your house, I love this. This is like the perfect scenario for me. Can we do one more of these? No, hopefully we'll never have to do any of that again. But and I think I've talked to other artist friends, and to non-artist friends, and I think we were able to to find a lot of quality time in those times, because we had something that just fed us during those isolating months,
right,
year that it was. And I think in that same line to the world, you imagine how the lockdown would have been without music or film or books, shows. We would have gone literally crazy as a species, I think. So it really, I think it's very common to downplay the role of art in society, because it doesn't add anything of physical value to humanity. And I think we're kind of going back to the stories and the myths, and one of the reasons why I love them so much. And I think during the pandemic we were able to show, or to see, or to experience the importance of art. How important it really is to us as humans. how it gives us a space to enjoy. It gives us space to see these stories and connect to each other and just find a safe haven on the difficulties of life and existence. And you see why did prehistoric men were drawing horses and animals on the caves. And I think we're able to chase a little bit of that, right? Like, because life out there can be brutal and horrible things do happen. But we were able to create and to enjoy those creations. Um, it's one of the joys that only humans can experience, right? No other living species on this planet can do that, and I think that's very beautiful.
It is. It absolutely is. And if I do say so, well, though that is wonderfully worded, if I do say so myself. Um, that's all the questions that I have for you, Abraham. I've already showered you with a whole bunch of praise, but I'm gonna shower you with a little bit more because it's my podcast. I do what I want. Um, Look, Abraham, I've already said time and time again how much I absolutely love the creative venture that you're able to put yourself onto. Seeing the stuff that you put out there, it's unique to a lot of the stuff that you see out there, and I enjoy that uniqueness, and I cherish and consume as much as I can because I love seeing like different kind of art forms being presented. And what you're pushing out there is some of the most unique stuff and some of the most stunning stuff, and I cannot get enough of it. Getting a chance to sit down and talk to you, get to really hear your backstory, get to see kind of the stuff you're able to produce, like hear the process behind it more than anything else. I absolutely love like hearing your story more than anything else. I already had enough like love and respect for what you do, but especially knowing what has gone behind it more than anything else, it gives me a whole different level of love and respect for what you do. Like knowing kind of everything that's gone into it and the culmination of everything. Like
Thank you.
It's wonderful knowing what you're doing to push yourself forward. It's wonderful knowing there's a lot of love and passion behind what you're doing, and I look forward to seeing that with just about every single piece that you do because I know there's going to be a lot going into it, and I appreciate that. The long and the short of it, of me rambling, is thank you so much for what you do, Abraham. Keep up the incredible work, and please, 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 please don't stop because what you're doing, I think everyone needs to see it at some point. It's stunning what you're doing, and I cannot wait for more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for saying that, and I don't think I could stop even if I wanted to, which I appreciate.
Good.
That I can't stop. It's like, I swear, I think, and a lot of artist friends, I think we have that thing of like, I don't even want to be making art. It's like, I can't stop. That's a problem. Because logically, it doesn't make even sense at points in life of like, why am I even bothering with this thing? And then you can't stop, so you do it, and then you do something cool, and like, okay, I'm glad. I'm glad something else is like, am I a puppet myself, and I've been controlled by something else?
You are a puppet, and God is the puppeteer. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. So no, but I appreciate everything that you've said. I appreciate that you invite me to your podcast.
Yeah.
I had a blast. I think it might be my first podcast interview if I
really
can't recall another one. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me and asking any questions and all that.
Well, thank you for your time more than anything else. I appreciate you, again, just basically spilling your guts out to me for a little bit so I can get kind of the interpretation of thank you for allowing me to learn your mythology more than anything else. How about that?
I love that. I'm telling you, I'm going to steal a bunch of stuff you said for my own website, for my bio.
Well, if people want to see the stuff that you're eventually going to put on the website or just see the stuff that I've been gushing about for the past, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours at this point, go ahead and plug yourself for the people at home.
Yeah, so you can see my work at abrahammatias.com. That's where I post pretty much all my stuff. On Instagram, I am as Abe Matias, Abe Matias. I believe I am on TikTok, of course. It's Abraham.Matias. I just forget that I have TikTok. I'm like, I haven't posted in 3 months. I probably should do something about it. I have a Twitter, but I barely even use it, even probably less now with all the drama going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really working on posting more stuff on my YouTube channel. I think that's the thing that I really want to focus on. Hopefully, with a lot of the myths and folklore, to be able to do some puppet shows for YouTube. I think that's one of my next projects. And yeah, so that's where you can find me.
Well, there you go. And if you missed any links, I'll be sure to have them in the description below so that people can truly find you. Because if they don't know your stuff by now, they really need to. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
No, just once again, thank you so much for inviting me. If any of your listeners, they're artists, which I assume many of them are, and it's the journey. It's the journey to find your art, to find the stories you want to tell, to find your medium, and we get there. You will get there. I got there, and there were many times that I'm like, what's the point of this? Maybe I'm just not cut to do this type of work. I guess, to end on a inspiring note, just don't give up. There's all the circling and all the confusion and frustration that sometimes one feels of not being able to make a living as an artist. It's that's part of the journey. That's part of the journey, and when it does make sense, it just feels amazing to see, to feel proud for yourself of not giving up. And yeah, just keep going, keep creating, and the world needs art, and will always need art made by humans, not AI.
Yep. Oh, no, trust me, all the human art that we can get.
So yeah, and again, thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to talk about, kind of like the journey out loud, because like the stuff that but it's different to kind of hear yourself talking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened.
That's one of the main reasons why I started this podcast in the first place, having people talk about that journey, because as you can attest to this, as incredible as the art that you put out there and whatnot, sometimes the journey to get to that point is just as incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like the movie's great, but the behind the scenes, sometimes it's even better.
Yes, that is wonderful words to end on. And all I have left to say is, for the people at home, hasta luego, mi amigos.
Hasta luego.
Tell me what's wrong, tell me sparks in motion. Sing me a song, tell me your eyes can open. Show me it all, pick me up in the car you drove when you used to call. Show me it all.
Thank you so much for sticking it to the end. If this is your first time listening, I greatly do appreciate it. This episode, I will be 100% honest, this was a fun episode. Getting the different perspective when it comes to Abraham, how he had grown up, the different form of art that he is toying around with, that not everyone gets a chance to really experiment with, hearing more or less his journey. That's what this podcast is all about. Getting his perspective more than anything else. I truly enjoyed that conversation. It was a fun one. And, it just reminds me once again, forever and always, what this podcast is about more than anything else. Truly getting the artist's perspective for some incredible stuff. Because anyone could look at what Abraham does and know in a heartbeat that it's talented, it's incredible. Because not everyone could do that kind of puppetry stuff. But really getting kind of like the inside look of Abraham and how he goes about it and such, that's what I crave more than anything else. It just reminds me, like always, what this podcast is about. Since I started this podcast over 2 years ago, thinking of the different kind of artists I've been able to immerse myself in, thinking of the different communities I've been able to really absorb and really get a cool perspective on. Really getting to immerse myself in all sorts of different art forms, getting to really rediscover what the process and the work ethic that goes behind that kind of stuff. I feel like this podcast, if you have never listened to it before now, is a true learning experience more than anything else. Not to say that I did not consider any of this stuff art beforehand, but ever since I've really gone on this journey and talked to all these different people and really get a good perspective on their insight, it gives me a new love and appreciation that I don't think I've ever really had before. Like, I've always been someone that loved art, but truly getting their perspective, their mentality more than anything else, it's fulfilling. That's all I could hope for with this. And trust me, with the guests I have coming up, with the guests I'm hoping to get, the guests I'm going to be reaching out to and trying to bring on the podcast, I'm always looking for that new experience to really get immersed in. As of late, I've had a good couple people call me a journalist because of what I do. I would like to hope maybe I'm considered a journalist, but I don't really know. I never considered it. Yeah. that's professional journalism right there. No. I've never really considered this more or less a journalistic expert. No, a journalism. What's the word I'm looking for? I'd never really thought of this as like a journalistic. I never thought of this as like a career as a journalist. I never really thought of this as kind of a route of journalism. I've just always considered this fun. This has been more or less a hobby for me that, if I'm going to be blunt, I wish could be my career. I'd love to be considered like a professional journalist or whatnot, but, thinking about what a journalist does, they take the time, they sit down, they do the research, they get invested in a topic, they go into the field, they immerse themselves in whatever topic they're trying to do, and then they try to tell a story based on what they've accumulated. Thinking of it like that, yeah, I'm kind of a journalist. Well, again, I don't really think of myself as one. I just think of myself as a human being genuinely interested in what my guests have to say. And I sincerely hope that you guys are along for that ride. I sincerely hope you guys are enjoying what the guests have to say as well, and I sincerely hope you're a part of that journey along the way. Thank you guys for the continued love and support. I hope that with every subsequent episode, it grows more and more, and I hope you guys get to truly enjoy every single guest I bring on board. I know I'm certainly going to enjoy every single step of this process, and I sincerely hope you enjoy it as well.